So I'm a developer by trade, a security person by accident. I've always wanted to build applications, starting off with video games when I was younger, and then realized I had a knack for developing web applications and back-end systems to support those web applications. Well, it turns out that there is a desperate need for security professionals who understand how applications work in order to help translate the concepts that we have in security into code to make applications that work in a secure fashion. So I had a lot of experience as a developer. I was able to bridge that gap with a little bit of security training. And that got me specifically into cloud security because in order to secure your applications, not only do you need to learn how to write secure code, but you also need to know how to harden the systems that are running your applications. So that's more or less how I got into cloud security. I've learned a whole lot about AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, and how to implement controls that can protect your environments, even if you don't know how to write application code. The best part about working in security and audit is actually solving real problems. I think that we're oftentimes a little bit too academic when it comes to our findings in IT. And we oftentimes mention things like a lack of encryption for this particular endpoint that has no sensitive information and that people typically encrypt anyway. And we get hyper fixated on things like that. Whereas I like to really focus on how to use controls that are going to solve real problems and prevent real attacks. So when I can tell someone a case study of something that has gone wrong as a result of having a misconfigured system or an inappropriate IAM policy, and I could show them how that exact thing can happen in their organization and maybe even demonstrate that that attack is literally possible in their environment using some offensive security skills, that's really rewarding because then it'll just click for them. They can see the real impact, the business value of the kind of work that we do in this field. I'm hoping to show the connection between audit and security, and sometimes how there's a disconnect between those two. There's no question that if you're implementing security controls properly, that will check a whole lot of boxes, and you can hopefully make it so that you can reproduce those configuration steps. Make sure that you've literally checked these boxes and have followed these different best practices when it comes to creating policies or network diagrams and implementations of those networks. But I also want to challenge folks to think about what kinds of auditing are you doing that perhaps is not translating to security? Are there any checks that we're doing that are largely showing that we're doing security theater as opposed to security? And I'm hoping that I can show you a variety of different attacks and how they could have been mitigated with these kinds of controls to show you the value of many of these controls and perhaps areas in which we should stop focusing most of our energy on. It's so important to connect with thought leaders in the space, as well as just everybody who's interested in these areas, because all too often we get in our little bubble where we use the same technologies, the same terminology, and we don't necessarily know how to translate that from one organization to the other, or even necessarily know all of the critical areas that we need to focus our energy on. So by learning from these thought leaders, as well as sharing our own thoughts and networking with folks at these conferences, we can make sure that we're not just doing the things that we know about right, but we also know the things that we're not even addressing in the first place.